What's going on, guys? It's the 5 Hour Plus podcast with me, Suddy, and this is Sham. And today we're going to be talking about the Champions League final. Chelsea versus Man City. Jeez, I had a bit too much coffee. But I guess, Sham, we'll talk about, before we get to the big final, we'll get to the small final. Very disappointing. United losing, was it 11-10 on penalties, an absolute perfection, perfectionist round of penalties, but De Gea coming up short in the end. We'll just go through really quickly. It was a disappointing game because I don't think a single player for United turned up. They had more hunger. In fact, it felt like Ollie was going in for the draw. Subs were made late. And Unai Emery, man, got to give it to him. I think it's his 5th trophy now for this competition, if I'm not wrong. He's an absolute specialist. And we both didn't call the score, to be fair, but we did say if there's a man who's going to take it, it will be him. And he did. What did you, I obviously the game was on really early. You had to wake up for it, but did you manage to get a bit of, what did you think of the game?
Yeah, I thought that there was going to be a mistake. Moreno, I think, who got the goal, took advantage of Lindelof and got in a good position to get around Lindelof to score the goal. I actually thought United played better in the 90 minutes and probably could have won the game. They just didn't have enough oomph at the end, but they played. It was that sort of form they've had in the Premier League where they play to a certain level and sometimes it's enough to get a goal and sometimes it's not enough to win the game. And it kind of fell that way. The goal, they worked hard for it, but it was fortuitous in the way it fell to Cavani's feet with the keeper having committed a different direction. But I did feel Emery did make the right subs. He got a bit more grasp on the game. United were really trying to push at the end, but Villarreal seemed more in control the further the game went on.
I thought,
with the penalties was quite disappointing. Like clearly some of those with the substitutions, it was disappointing because like Marta and Telles were brought on really just to take penalties, and I think Telles actually played right back just so they could get him on the pitch.
Yeah. This when he brought Francis Coquelin on, when Emery did, it was actually a very good substitution. He kind of short things up, and they were going for penalties, and rightfully so. They should. They're 7th in the La Liga. They shouldn't be at United's level. But he played really well, and he knows English opposition. He kind of broke things up. He was a bit of a that kind of they're putting a gangster in the middle, that kind of guy, and he did really well.
It's interesting with them. Just Villarreal, it's their first major European trophy. They've been a team at times. They've been there or thereabouts. They've had Riquelme did really well there.
The 2005, 2006, Champions League
semis. Yeah. They were a penalty away from getting into that final.
I think they lost to Arsenal, ironically.
They're a bit like an Everton in England. Not with the history of Everton, but in terms of where they are in the league, there or thereabouts. They're that kind of level of team. It's the first major trophy. The city of Villarreal, I could be wrong on the exact number, but the population is like 50,000.
Yeah, it's tiny. It's tiny.
A tiny city. Yeah, a bit like Green Bay in America, where it's like 100,000 people and they all go watch the Green Bay Packers. It's a bit like that.
This fills the whole stadium. Yeah. I actually, from a goalkeeping point of view, I thought that was De Gea's mistake, the goal. I felt we talked about him not coming off his line, not commanding his area better. Lindelof was at fault in terms of the actual kind of skirmish between the two players, but I thought he should have come off his line.
When you think that the ball comes over the top and Pogba and Lindelof are between the ball and the striker, so De Gea should very well. Actually, De Gea should be calling for it coming out. Pogba is almost pushing Lindelof because he wants Lindelof to get in position. So if De Gea comes and just catches it, and the striker's basically side-footed it. It's a long ball in the area, and it's been volleyed home, like almost off the ground, not like in the air. So you're right that there was position there for De Gea to come out, and you'd wonder if Henderson would have done that. And De Gea, I quickly messaged you after the game. From the time I saw the penalty shot, De Gea his head, he just looked all blocked here. It did look like it was just. I don't want to say it looked like it was too much for him, but he just didn't look in it during the shootout, whereas the Villarreal keeper really looked up for it the whole shootout. He nearly saved 2 or 3, and then he got the one on De Gea at the end.
Yeah. Okay. Just last question I have then. It just feels De Gea's done. It just kind of there's this whole cloud. He's a legend of the club. I just feel like this will be too much to bear if he was to remain.
I'm not sure if he's quite a club legend. He's been a very, very good servant of Manchester United. The last 3 years have not been great, but the guy's won 4 Player of the Year awards. Like that is a wonderful achievement. If the club had achieved more while he was around, he probably would be in that club legend level, I think.
Well, I just quickly, I say club legend because it's one position that it's a singular position that he's potentially the third best in the club ever in that position, potentially. That's
In
kind
the
of
modern
my
era, in the modern era,
yeah,
I'd say Schmeichel and Van der Sar above him. I mean, you go
yeah,
back to Stephanie and Grieg and all those fellas, but
yeah,
in
yeah,
the modern
yeah.
era, yeah, he's been a long-standing servant of the club, and United have like between Schmeichel and Van der Sar, it was a shambles. They even got Bartes, and that didn't work, you know. So
Yeah,
he's been a
and Mark
magnificent
Bosnich.
servant of the club. It does feel like that was his last game. Maybe there's something lined up for him. It'd be interesting if you went to PSG because they got Keylor Navas, who's criminally underrated. Maybe it's because he's from Costa Rica. I don't know, but
maybe because he dyes his hair blonde tips. I don't know.
I don't know. But if De Gea leaves, he could go to Paris. His family's still in Madrid, so I don't see him going to Real or Atletico. But I don't see him going to any other Spanish team who want to pay him 300,000 a week. But he may take less to go and be with his family.
Yeah. All right, let's shift on to Man City Chelsea. I think it's going to be a cracking final, man. I don't think historically Champions League has been quite boring finals. We've had a few kind of good ones. One of my favorite that comes to mind would be the Madrid Atletico final. The first one was Gareth Bale scored in the 90th minute to equalize.
We watched that together?
No, we didn't. I remember because I woke up the next morning to. I was in Perth at the time, but I woke up the next morning to watch it, so it wouldn't have been. We watched
the Drogba, what I call the Drogba.
You watched the Drogba, but you slept through it. You slept through it, and then you came late for soccer the next day. You were useless the whole weekend.
I was sleep talking the whole game. You guys only figured out at the end of extra time that I was asleep because I was talking the whole time. Apparently,
that's hilarious. Anyway, look, Chelsea, Man City. They played multiple times this season, with Tuchel getting the better of him on both occasions. Give me a second. Let's just see here real quick. So yeah, Chelsea have won 3 out of the 4 times they've played this season. That's a lot of time to play. Jeez, they're gonna be the 5th time. And
3 of the 4.
No, sorry, two of the 3. Excuse me, 2 of the 3. But going back to the last game, the second time they played last season, Chelsea took it 2-1. That was Frank Lampard's Chelsea. Look, Chelsea have transformed themselves over the season. Nothing like the transformation of Man City. But I guess the point that I want to talk about is I think they've dropped off at the wrong time, Chelsea.
Exactly.
Whereas Man City is easily, they're shuffling, they're happy, they're good mood, they're this in their flow, so they can they're chopping and changing and they're still winning. And this guy Torres is coming into form. Now, for some reason, I think Chelsea's going to win this, but I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah, the first game this season that they played, that was the game where Man City suddenly turned up. They were sort of struggling to get wins on the board, and then they just completely spanked. It was like 2-0 after half an hour, but it could have been 7-0. Like, it was one of those games, and everyone's jaws just dropped after that game because City was stuttering. The 12 points after 8 games. Everyone's what's going on here, and they came. It was 2 Stamford Bridge, if I remember correctly, and they just completely outplayed.
So the Stamford Bridge 3-1, yeah.
3-1, yeah. And I think it was 3-0 very quickly. Like, it was 3-0 after 40 minutes or something. Like, they were playing champagne football and with intent. The thing about City is at times they pass all these pretty patterns and they don't necessarily look like they're going to kill someone.
It was within
they
half an
were
hour.
going in to kill Chelsea that game. Like, it was brutal, but beautiful at the same time. And then that's the Lampard era, so you can forget about that game. But it was a significant game for City in their season. Chelsea have won the last 2 games. I think Chelsea also beat City last year. That was the game where Liverpool won the title because Chelsea beat City.
Yeah, Chelsea won 2-1.
So there have been some significant meetings between these teams. And it's interesting because both of the last 2 games, the FA Cup semi and the league game, it was kind of, if I remember correctly, it was sort of 1-1. The game was there to be won. And somehow in the middle of the second half, Chelsea found something almost similar to what happened last season when Chelsea beat City to win the title. They seem to find something and then overpower City. It's a bit foolish to rely on whatever that inspiration is. But I think the fact that City play a certain style seems to get the best out of Chelsea. They almost try and match that style, and it suits them to do so. But you are right about City. Like, City were on an absolute roll. You look at the scores. They beat West Ham. They drew Madrid. They beat Real Madrid again. Then they beat City, and then they lost to Arsenal, and the balloon popped at that point. They lost to Arsenal, they lost to Leicester, they lost to Villa. They beat Leicester in the league, but the reality is that Arsenal game kind of really got their momentum out of sync. And it was kind of supposed to be that was just the warm up for the FA Cup final, but Chelsea's season really struggled the last the last 4 games. They've kind of so they beat City, and then they had 4 sort of poor results after that. So it's a bit like the way that United kind of finished the season. United were doing really well, and then all of a sudden that sort of Leicester, Liverpool, Fulham type result just kind of happened. It mirrors what United have done, which is not a particularly good sign going into the European final. Yeah. City have been, they've been, ever since they got in the sync, they've been in class above everybody. To be perfectly frank, you look at their results: spanked Everton, beat Brighton, beat City.
Well, Sean, I'm just looking
and beat PSG as well. So the thing about City, though, interestingly, is they have looked a bit suspect in defense. They conceded 4 against City. They conceded 2 against or 3 against Brighton. The thing while they play really good football, I don't think that they're not as clinical in front of goals as the teams that won under Guardiola, the first titles that he won before Liverpool had that season. They scored about 100 sort of goals that season, and they conceded a bit more. Whereas this season's success has kind of been built on a strong defense with Stones and Diaz playing really well. Edison had a sensational first season. I think he's playing very well, but I think what he brought to Man City is now is gathering less attention, but he's still really good. And I think that they're quite settled at the back, and it's just about getting those different combinations in that sort of attacking 5 that they have, and how those guys play together, and getting the best combination right to beat City. That's going to be important for them, how they set up.
Well, I want to talk about, we're talking a lot about Premier League form. I want to talk a bit about Champions League form. Man City have had a perfect Champions League campaign, except for the draw against Porto back in the group stage. They've won everything. First leg, second leg, they won everything.
How many goals did they concede? Because they were setting some records with that one.
I have to go and count here. It's not
if I remember correctly, and I could be insanely wrong on this, but I think they've only conceded 1 or 2 goals the whole season.
I'll just quickly count here. In the whole Champions League season, 1, 2, 3, 4 goals.
Okay, 4 in 12 games. Yeah.
5. Excuse me. Yeah, no, it's 4. It's 4. Look, they've been in unbelievable form. I mean, you think about who they've beaten: PSG, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Borussia Dortmund, Marseille, Porto, Olympia. It's not particularly. I mean, it's not exactly the easy ride they say Man City get. Man, they've had tough fixtures. You look at Chelsea, also tough fixtures. Arguably as if not more tough, beating Madrid, Porto, Atletico Madrid. They beat Sevilla 4-0 in the group stage. Very, very tough. Both have come through very tough, and I think it's going to be very interesting, that midfield battle, Jorginho versus Fernandinho. I don't mean that in a head-to-head battle. I'm talking about the battle of kind of tacticians, the battle of the 5-yard passes.
You think Fernandinho will play?
I was just going to ask that. Do you think? I mean, I meant to say Rodrigo, but this could be Fernandinho's last game. Would he play? I don't know. Will Aguero get a sniff at all? A 5-minute sniff? I don't know.
Yeah.
Guardiola's too kind of ruthless for that. But what I do see,
Guardiola doesn't mind experimenting, but he's not an overly sentimental man. Guardiola.
Yeah. The overall the kind of advantage that Man City have is that Chelsea had to play nearly a full team against Aston Villa, because they were chasing Champions League qualification, ironically. But I think the teams line up very similarly to how you've seen all season. That 3-4-3 that he likes playing, likes to keep that ball, likes to recycle possession. The only change I think you'll see from Villa is if Kante is not injured, which I don't think he is. Kante will play. Probably Chelsea's
Kante will be absolutely crucial in this game. Absolutely crucial, I pointed him out before the FA Cup final, but he had delivered an absolute masterclass against Real Madrid. He was the reason that they won the semi-finals. His ability to make interceptions and potentially win the ball high up the pitch. Chelsea might have to play differently than normal. They might have to adopt the strategy that United did against City, where they pressured and tackled high up the pitch and put the defense under pressure, and get at City a bit. They're not a particularly good pressing side, City. That's Chelsea, sorry. They struggle a bit with pressing. Werner, Havertz, Pulisic are not particularly good pressers of the ball. So it's going to come down to the positioning of Jorginho and the snap and bite of Kante if they want to go that way. But it might be their best chance because you can't give City the ball. And Chelsea's strength is really built around that Jorginho Kante axis with the other players ahead of them. So guys like Mounts, guys like Pulisic, and the combinations that they choose are going to be very important because if you go that sort of 3-4-3 that you were mentioning, you probably got Kante and Jorginho in midfield. So who do you go ahead of that? Mount will probably play high left. You probably have Werner. And then if you have Werner, I think you've got to play Havertz because I think Havertz gets the best out of Werner, even though Werner's not had the best season. I heard a statistic the other day. His expected goals is 12.7, but he's only scored 6.7 goals, Werner, which is shocking, really, if you think about it. But
he's had 14 goals ruled out from VAR this year. There has to be a bit of bad luck in that.
Yeah,
you know?
And he sometimes players take a season, getting used to England. He's a young man. He's left the country. There's a pandemic.
We talked about him and Kai Havertz and Hakim Ziyech. Sorry, they're all 21 to 23, that kind of age. Exactly.
And Ziyech's going to be very important, I think. I'm a big fan of Ziyech. I think he's got that X factor. But if they play Werner, I don't see Ziyech playing there as well. And Mount will play. The question with Mount is, where will he play? I don't see him playing in that midfield two against City. I just don't see it because he's more progressive. So I do think there'll be a bit more. They will play, rather than say someone like Hudson-Odoi at wing back, they'll play a more traditional fullback. Marcos Alonso could be important against Kyle Walker. Marcos Alonso is the type of guy who would do well in a game like this. But the midfield need to protect their defense. There's not a lot of pace in Chelsea's defense. And City can get at that if they have the ability to get in behind. And that could be where the game is sort of won and lost. How Chelsea keep possession and keep Man City away from that defense. Because Azpilicueta and Silva are very good players. They also have a combined age of 68. So it's important that they're protected at least as much as possible.
Yeah. So let's get straight to the game then. You give yours and I'll give mine. Well, how do you think the game pans out? What do you think? Who do you think comes out top? I mean, this is the let's just get this right. This is the Champions League, man. Man City, Chelsea win this. It's another feather in the cap. Man City win this. They become, they become the medium-sized club that they want to be. So,
who? Sorry,
if Man City win this,
become the medium-sized club
that they always aim to be. So it's huge. I mean, this Champions League is huge.
This is the noisy neighbors putting a second story in their house, isn't it? That's
Absolutely,
really what it is.
Man. Absolutely.
City and Chelsea have been, and this is hard to say. Like we grew up watching Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, but Chelsea and City have been the preeminent teams of the last 10 years. They won the last 7 Premier League titles.
Chelsea and Man City now remind me of Arsenal United in the early 2000s, late 90s. That rivalry, just pure powerhouses going at it. It's war
building. The difference is you don't talk about personalities. You talk about Keane versus Vieira or Martin Keown or
there's no personalities.
Those sort of things. And they haven't had, like, United and Arsenal had some proper matches. Like you talk about, there was a game at Old Trafford where the umpire, referee, yellow carded everybody in the first 5 minutes, and they all set up trying to play football. FA Cup semi. They've not had a match where you've gone, wow, that's a match that we'll remember forever. Even that Highbury game in 2004, they didn't shake hands and the tunnel and all that. They've not had that game, this rivalry. This could be the game. This is the biggest game in football. Never mind World Cup final. This game is bigger than the World Cup final. Chelsea Champions League has become the preeminent league in the world. Or the preeminent.
I think 2.5 billion people watched the Champions League final.
Yeah, and it's about 2 billion for the World Cup. So
Jesus, okay.
Yeah, it's just 2 billion for the World Cup.
Yeah. I on that point, before you get to your prediction, on that point of personality, I have noticed the trend in the last 2-3 years. The managers are the personalities now because they were those players back then who had the personalities. Players today are so PR machined out. They're so very bland. If you watch Harry Maguire speak, there's no personality to him. But if you see, I think the general narrative for this is Tuchel versus Pep. It's not Jorginho versus Fernandinho. Yeah, I don't know. That's the trend I've
even
noticed.
Back in the day, there was, you did have sort of Wenger and Wenger and Fergie, sorry, but bigger than that was the players. But it's now the other way around.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go on.
The thing about
Tuchel versus
Chelsea
Pep.
is it's always hard because they always change managers.
Yeah.
You know, the longest serving manager is Mourinho, who is one of a lot of other clubs' shortest serving manager. You know, so that model is like, oh, you don't do well for a season, you're out. You know, we don't care if you got the goal record at our club, you're out. You know, that sort of thing. But having said that, we said the ruthless thing in January would be to get rid of Lampard now or the end of the season. We didn't actually think they would get rid of him now, but they did. It was literally like 3 days after we made that prediction. I actually think City will win this game. I think that they are more stable. I think that they will. I think it'll be won late. I think it'll be a proper game of football. I'm going 2-1 to City. I think that they, and if they win, they would have won what they call the Fagan treble. So Liverpool in '84, when they went from Paisley to Joe Fagan, so he was sort of promoted from the boot room to the Liverpool manager. It was his first season. And everyone outside the club said, this is a terrible decision. No, he's not going to do well. And the players just decided, we're going to win everything for Joe. And they won the League Cup, the Premier League, and the Champions League. The second biggest haul other than United with the treble 99. So I think that City, I mean, historically, they've not got the background of other clubs, but they are the biggest club in England right now. And they've got unlimited resources. It's a bit disappointing. Like, their fans don't seem to celebrate league titles the way it just almost seems to be a bit expected. Maybe it's just the footage I'm watching, but you'd love to see him celebrate a bit more. It'd be interesting to see if they were to win this game, how the fans would celebrate.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's going to be a very similar final to Barcelona United 2011, I believe, but 3-1. Rooney scored. I think it's going to be very similar to that. Chelsea might get a sniff. Man City score first, Chelsea get a sniff, and then Man City will just cut their throats. I think it's going to be a mauling. I don't even think it's going to be late. I think it's going to be kind of a 3-1, 4-2, maybe even 4-1 if Chelsea try to get another goal around the 70th minute, that kind of thing. I don't see. I have this weird feeling, but I think it's too emotional to think Chelsea stand a better chance than Man City. They're not even.
It's hard to win trophies like this when you're a caretaker manager. Having said that, Chelsea won their only Champions League under a caretaker manager. So, but
they won the UEFA Cup with Benitez, who was also a caretaker manager.
Who was also a caretaker manager. But typically teams don't. Pep would also, I think he sets a record for like the longest. If he wins this game, he sets a record for the longest time between Champions League wins, because he won in 2011 and now he's won 2021. So I think that's a record for the longest time between Champions League.
It'd be the same as Fergie, 99, 2008.
Well, that was 9 years.
What's
99
this?
to 08.
Oh, 10 years. Sorry, 10
Guardiola would be 10 years.
10 years. Yeah, 2011. So I think the final will be the same as this 2011 final. Pep's too good, man. Pep is just too good.
Can I ask you a question about Pep? Yeah. Did you see him talk about Aguero after the game when they won the title?
Yeah, I didn't. I was so surprised, man.
I thought it was fake. What do you think? You thought it was genuine? I mean, maybe it's the conspiracy theorist in me, but I thought, nah. Like, he's never played Aguero nearly as much as any other club would have. He seems to have an issue with strikers like Ibrahimovic, Eto'o. Strikers, his ideal system has no striker; it has a false 9. And Aguero's learned to play the 10 and 9. But I don't know. Like, I didn't feel. I don't know.
Well, his ideal system as well doesn't favor big personalities. He needs, quiet people taking orders. Which is why Lewandowski, as many goals as he scored, didn't gel with Pep as well. Did I think it was fake? I don't know, Sham. I'd like to think it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's like the way you said, who were you talking about the other day? Humanized someone. Suarez. I think that humanized him a lot because Pep's this kind of robot, this perfectionist.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe under all of that, Pep's finally let his emotions go.
Yeah.
And you can have that reaction because you've had maybe not the perfect relationship with someone, but you can appreciate what they've done.
That's 100%. Like, Pep had his mum die last year. They had a very quiet season. I don't think they won the League Cup last year, maybe, but nothing else. I think this is very cathartic, and I think you'll see more tears if they're going to win on Saturday night. You'll see more tears for sure. But I'd like to think it wasn't.
We said at the beginning of the season that that Guardiola had a challenge this year that he's never had before. It was after they got smashed by Leicester 5-2. Like, he's been at this club the longest time he's ever been at a club. He's never had to rebuild before. And we asked if he was capable of it. Well, regardless of the result, I think he has shown that, he's on the verge of creating what would be basically his fourth great team. He's a one Barcelona great team, one Bayern team, and now this is his second City team that you could count as a modern day great team. I still think that the idea of Barcelona makes that team the greatest, with all the La Masia players and the possible GOAT and Lionel Messi, with Xavi and Iniesta pulling the strings. But this team stands with those teams as a great team if they can pull this off and go and do the stuff they have to do next season to win titles.
Yeah. It's going to be a great final. I'm excited to watch it, even though United's not in it. It's a final. I think the most excited I've been for a Champions League final in a while. I don't know why. I just think it's going to be a real battle. Any closing thoughts, Sean?
It'll be interesting to see probably two things, because we've probably been a bit pro Man City, but two things that could possibly work is, one, Pep does like to tinker. He could over tinker in this one. He should suppress any desire he has to tinker. He's got the better hand. He needs to play that first before he tries something, and he'll have options that he can bring on the bench and change stuff, but just stick with what you've got up front. Don't tinker yourself out of the game. For Chelsea, I do think that they have certain advantages in terms of physical power, set pieces, the ability to get in behind City if they can transition well. There is opportunities for them, but the smart money's on City for this one, I think.
Yeah, no, same. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, look, Champions League final Saturday night. It's going to be a fucking cracker. Thanks so much, Sean, for watching. We'll just finish up then. I'm so excited for this game, honestly. So thanks so much for watching, guys. We're the 5 Yard Pass podcast. My name is Suddy. This is Sham. And as we say here, keep football simple. And as always,
keep passing, guys. Cheers.